Well, hello out there. This is Heather Vickery, and you've tuned into the Brave Files podcast. I'm happy to have you here with us today. Have you ever fantasized about getting away from it all? I know that I have, but I've never quite imagined it the way today's guests, Emily and Erik Orton, imagined it. They've actually lived that dream by buying a boat and sailing with their 5 children from the Caribbean back to Manhattan. And it wasn't always easy. That may be an understatement. It definitely wasn't always pretty. But the experience helped them get to know themselves better, their family better, and they wouldn't trade it for the world. I talked with Emily and Erick about their epic adventure, how they ended up going on the adventure in the first place, and what they've been doing since then. These unsuspecting sailors learned to make the brave leap even though they didn't know everything, because imperfect action is always better than perfect inaction. And you'll never be disappointed if you follow your dreams, because the process is the reward. And we talk about so many more wonderful things, so let's get to it.
Competence, credibility, and calm.
This is Heather Vickery, and you're listening to The Brave Files, stories from people living courageously. When we choose bravely in big and small ways, it powerfully elevates our lives. I hope these stories connect with you and encourage you to embrace bravery in every possible way, day after day. Together, we can build a movement of courageous living that enriches both our lives and our communities. And if you enjoy the show, I ask you to please share it with others. Maybe think of someone who you want to choose bravely right alongside you. Thanks for tuning in. Now here's the show. All right, everybody. So I want you to meet Emily and Erik Orton, 2 very unlikely sailors with no background, no budget, or no business on a boat. But they got on the boat anyway, and that experience transformed their relationship to fear. It gave them a new level of confidence and provided the template to accelerate their next adventures around the world. And boy, have they had many of them. It's really cool. Special thanks to friend of the Brave Files and past guest Denise Bowker for introducing me to Emily and Erik. Welcome to the Brave Files.
Thanks, Heather.
It's good to be with you, Heather. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Y'all have done what I think most people would consider like very brave, like maybe even crazy. I wonder if some folks told you they thought you were a little bit Looney Tunes.
Yeah, we got some of that.
You got some of that. But so let's tell people how did 2 such folks end up as sailors? And we're like not even dropping any, like that doesn't even mean anything. What the hell? You guys took your 5 kids on a boat like across the country or world or something crazy. Tell me what happened.
Across the ocean. Yeah, so I think it all started, we were living in Manhattan. We'd been there for a few years, and I was working in the Broadway industry, had been managing and producing shows, and had gone out on a limb as a young guy and produced a show on my own, trying to make a name for myself, and it failed horribly.
Yeah, but you did make a name for yourself.
Yeah, in the sense that I ended up on the cover of Crane's Business New York as sort of the poster boy for failed off-Broadway shows.
Wow. Wow. I mean, hey, there's no bad publicity, right?
I guess, I wasn't the only one, but I was part of a Roundup article, and I literally had my face on the cover of the magazine. And so it marked a real low point in my professional career. And so at this point, I had lost a whole bunch of people, a lot of money. I had just quit my job on a very successful show, big musical, to do this. I've been working on Wicked, and I left that to do this little project of mine, and now was unemployed and essentially broke. And so, but Emily and I, we had, how many kids at the time? We had just had our 4th child. Our son was born the day before this show opened.
Wow.
So, I was a new dad again, and I felt a lot of heaviness and a lot of weight. And so, but I also felt a lot of embarrassment and shame because this had been very public. So I kind of wanted to just disappear for a while, and that's but at the same time I had to keep providing for our family. And so I ended up finding a temp job downtown in the financial industry, and I worked the night shift so that I could have my days free to hustle and try and do the stuff that I really was interested in. And I would take these dinner breaks along the Hudson River, and I would just walk up and down, and I would always see these boats out at sunset, and they were so beautiful and peaceful and soothing. And after everything that I had been through, I was just feeling like I wanted something like that in my life, something that felt a little bit more in control and just healing. And I would tell Emily about this. I mean, we would talk on the phone, and she was doing a wonderful job consoling me and encouraging me. And it took me a while to finally realize that, all these sailboats were coming out of a sailing school that was directly downstairs from where I worked. And I'd never sailed in my life, didn't know anybody who owned a sailboat, had no history or background in it. But I would just constantly describe this to Emily. She's like, Eric, you should just go in and check it out. But I definitely did not see myself as a sailor. But eventually she prevailed upon me, and I walked into this sailing school that was just it was floating there on one of the docks in the marina. And of course they were lovely and welcoming and wanted to help me out. And, we're going to get to all this, I think, in the course of our conversation. But fast forward, we ended up several years later buying and living on a sailboat with our 5 kids. And we went through all kinds of difficulties and trauma and trials.
It wasn't peaceful and relaxing and soothing. It was healing. It wasn't any of those other things.
But if I were to trace back to what was the most difficult point in our journey, I would say that it was this one right here, stepping into the sailing school, because it required me to see myself in a new way and to step into a role or a possibility that I never would have considered for myself before. And even just having a willingness to see myself as somebody who sailed was a big leap for me. And I think everything else after that was a journey, of course, but that journey began with this small willingness to just open myself up to a new possibility.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's incredibly cool. For lack of a better word, I'm like, what's the right word I want to use there? But just this, well, what is this? Where's this coming from? And how could this impact me? And you had this supportive family, the supportive spouse. And I don't often have more than one guest at a time on the show. And since I have both of you here, Emily, was that the most poignant moment for you in this process?
It wasn't for me, but it was a turning point, because with him shifting how he saw himself and us being in relationship, then it meant something had to change for me. I didn't think that's what it would mean. I thought, great, go take a class, do something for you, everything you do is like taking care of other people, just get what you need. And I didn't think that was really going to disturb my world at all. And I was totally wrong. And partly because of just how his schedule was, they said we can only do a class for you if you round up the other people who are going to be in it, because that's not one of our normal times. And so out of the 8 million people that I think were living in the 5 boroughs at that time, nobody wanted to take a sailing lesson.
At least I couldn't find out.
Then he asked, and I kept feeding him more people to try, but ultimately he said, hey, I have this great idea. What if you and our 2 oldest kids could take this sailing class with me, and be like a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, and me, who's been scared of water for like 35 years at this point, like deep water, was a real problem for me, except I never had to encounter it, right? I just wasn't dealing with the water. I stayed on land. But being faced with like my favorite person wanting to grow in this way, and then 2 of our kids being really excited about it, like that's a real tender spot for me.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had to give a little. I tried to push back at first and be like, that'll be really expensive, and it's not just the cost of 4 people taking this class, but
childcare.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
our other 2 children. In the meanwhile, we had added a baby, and she had Down syndrome, and there were just some extra things around that. And
So yeah, now we're up to 5 kids.
Now we're up to 5 kids. And so, yeah, it was the child care and transport and all of this stuff. And he was like, I will get a second job. And that, I mean, when someone you love wants to do something so badly, right? So I caved. It was like a 5-week class. I know, I chose.
I knew anything for 5 weeks, right?
Let's do this, And, some of the first things we learned were that, well, actually, first of all, I'll back up and just say, Eric was very persuasive because he said, look, you don't have to get in the water. If you learn how to sail, you never have to get in the water. Like, you could go out there and stay in the boat.
How did that work out for you, Emily?
It didn't work out for me that way.
She tried.
So one of the first things that we learned on the sailboat is that we all get seasick. And I have to say that actually never changed. It was something that we just had to take into account and deal with throughout the whole process.
Wow.
But something that did change is that we came to realize that we loved sailing and we loved how our family interacted with each other when we were on the sailboat. As we progressed further, our first venture out was a total nightmare. But again, we persisted, we gave it a little space and tried again. And we joined this little club where we could sail as much as we want for, I don't know, like the cost of monthly cable out in New Rochelle.
We're just talking about day sails out to Long Island Sound and the Hudson River. These are no trips. These are just going out for a few hours.
Yeah, and it's like the size of 2 picnic tables put together, and you just kind of sit and you look at each other, and your phones don't work, and it's a beautiful thing for a family to experience. And so we decided that we actually wanted more of that. And as Eric and I took more lessons and had to get on bigger boats, I was really actually faced with that dilemma, what to do about the water thing. Am I actually literally going to get on a sailboat in the middle of the Caribbean and not engage with the water at all? And so on this one, we were taking a combined class. It was 2 classes crammed into 1 week in the British Virgin Islands, and we had an amazing instructor, and everybody was snorkeling except me, and I was just sitting there alone on the back of this boat. We're kind of having an existential moment and being like, who am I? What do I really believe? I tell my kids that, they try new things and that disruption leads to growth, and yet here I am not getting in the water. And I thought if I could just stick my face in the water, right? I just put on some flippers and a mask, and I was like, I'm just going to try to get from here to the little nearby reef where everyone was snorkeling, and I was so terrified of sharks. But I got in the water, and I was just singing little songs to myself to try to pump myself up, and I saw this green turtle just glide past me. And at first I was just stopped me short, and I was totally fascinated. And then all those fears came rushing back into the space, saying like, oh my gosh, what eats turtles? I was so scared.
Next step up the food chain.
And I was like, I did the old technique of just kick as fast as you can, right? If I can get into a group, then I won't be a lone target out here. And so that was kind of like a survival mechanism. But as I made it over near the reef, I caught sight of this really colorful fish, and it kind of had like a smile on its face. Now I know it's called a parrotfish, and I just started following it, and it was leading me to beautiful fans and corals and just little schools of tiny iridescent fish, and I completely lost track of my fear. And Eric tapped me on the shoulder once he noticed I was out there, and he was like, do you want to swim back together? Are you okay? How are you doing? And this, to your point and to the whole heart of your message, I said, you know what? I just realized that this is my new favorite thing, and now I'm wondering what other favorite things are hiding on the other side of my fears. And that really changed the whole equation for me, that I was like, okay, maybe this is something we could take on, because
that's cool.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much in that, embracing that fear and recognizing, not only is it not as scary as you had built it up to be, but also that it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
This scary thing was actually wonderful. What else is possible for me? That's amazing. All right. Well, so in the interest of not having, we don't have hours and hours and hours together. I wish we did.
As fun as that would be.
You all decided to take your family on a pretty large year-long adventure. Tell us all about that.
So yeah, I ended up staying at this temp job that I described for a long time, longer than I ever thought. And meanwhile, we'd become more and more skilled sailors, and we were sailing on bigger and bigger boats. And we had been nurturing this idea of going out to sea, living on a boat, living aboard as a family. And we faced all the fears that I think any reasonable person does, is, which is, what are all the things that could go wrong? I'm going to quit my job. We'll have no income. We could injure ourselves. We could drown. The boat could, we could run into something and sink.
Even if we never work again.
Even if we make it get back, nobody ever hires a guy who's just, has this big gaping hole in his resume. All these fears about financial security, physical safety, and just also judgment from other people.
Sure. And least of all, like the kids. What are the kids going to do? What about schooling? What about like all of these other things, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess we did have a little bit of a leg up because we had started homeschooling a few years prior, and so that was a matter of just moving our homeschool from our apartment to a boat.
There you go.
Well, okay. I had a lot of concerns about that.
I was like, so easy for Eric to say. Eric, are you doing the homeschooling?
I have people for that sort of thing.
My degree was in teaching, and I was really loving that that role. But I wasn't sure how that was going to work on a boat, and it was wild.
So we had all these reasons that we were scared to go. Because if we did this and it didn't work, we were going to look like idiots, and in front of anybody that was paying attention. And I think my ego is definitely tied up in it as well. But ultimately, as we looked at all the things that could go wrong, we kind of pivoted and we said, well, we know that those are the things that could go wrong.
And I want to pause here and just say our daughter was 14 when we were going through this whole decision-making process, and she said something really compelling. She asked you a question. Do you remember?
Yeah, we would talk about this at the breakfast table regularly, and finally she said, "You guys talk about this all the time, but do you really have the guts to do it?"
Ooh, out of the mouth of babes.
Right. And so we felt like we did, but we also realized that our kids were watching us. We knew that our credibility was on the line with them. We knew that they were going to find out if we were all talk and no action or otherwise. And so we started to look at all the possibilities of things that could go right.
That was the new question that we asked.
Yeah. So we said, well, what could go right?
Yes.
We said, well, we could get out there and we could see beautiful, amazing things, just like Emily did when she was snorkeling, but 100x. We could come together as a family like never before. We could just be so close and galvanized. We could learn new skills. We could make new friends. The list just sort of exploded from there of all the things that could go right. And we knew that if that many things could possibly go right, and the scope of that compared with the short, unlikely list of things that could go wrong, the scale is easily tipped in favor of going, and things just kind of cascaded from there. We put an offer in on a boat. It was a process, but we eventually bought a used fixer-upper sailboat. I tried to get a leave of absence from work. They said no. I said, here's my notice.
Wow.
We found subletters for our apartment, and everything just sort of started to come together once we made that decision. And we bought this boat, sight unseen. We had somebody inspect it for us, and then we packed our bags, and in the dead of winter in New York, we flew down to the Caribbean and showed up with our suitcases and met our sailboat and moved aboard and proceeded to figure it out.
Wow.
And at that point, that's when we realized that we had made the dumbest decision of our lives.
And now you're stuck and you need to sail this mother back home.
Yeah. And in fact, in our book, 7 at Sea, we've got a chapter called Dreamer's Remorse. And I think there's another one called
Whose Dumb Idea Was
This? Because it's as I'm sure you know, Heather, it can be really hard to get what you want. It can be very scary. And
it's why a lot of people don't do it. The fear of success of actually getting it. Then what the hell are you supposed to do?
Yeah, and we realized that we were in way over our heads, that this trip was going to cost more money than we had budgeted. Our skills were vastly deficient, and we just had no idea what we were doing. And we really had to hunker down and figure out how we were going to make this work.
I think
Wow.
the first thing that we had to do, and it took us several weeks to figure this out because we were just like going from putting out fire to fire. And I just said, this is not sustainable. We can't live in crisis mode.
Yeah.
We're going to have all of these issues. We have to put them on a leash somehow. And so I said, let's sit down and talk about what a good day would look like for each of us, or what does success look like? How would you define a successful day? And then we started making sure that we were hitting those notes.
That's a beautiful way to build.
Yeah, there was no end to the number of problems that we were going to need to solve. But we couldn't let that just steamroll our whole life. You can do it for a short time, but that you cannot live that way. And so that was a real turning point for us to just kind of hit the brakes on the problem solving and be like, let's do some of the things that really matter, and then we'll just accept the reality, that we're going to address this a little bit at a time.
Have you maintained that daily approach of, instead of avoiding all the things that could go wrong or trying to fix all the things that are going wrong, what is it that will make us each feel successful?
One of the things that we've been able to do to help maintain that is to have some really solid morning routines, and then we also have some really solid evening routines, and then we can check in periodically and be like, how is it feeling? Are we solving too many problems, or
I think there's some things that are very steadying that we just do with absolute consistency. Emily and I walk together every morning. That's how we start our day.
Nice.
We talk as a couple, and we figure out our day. We each are journalers. Our kids are journalers. Those are some things that we felt like was really important. We're very steady about, the basic things. You create systems so that you can free up your mind and energy to do other things. And so we do that with meals and chores and things like that. And none of that is rocket science. But for us at the time, we were just overwhelmed. I think a turning point for us was we were feeling, like I said, like we'd made the dumbest decision of our lives. And what we wanted to do was just sell the boat and fly back home and beg for my job back. But we decided that before we did that, we were going to do something that we had learned to do throughout the course of our young married life, which was we were going to get grateful. Before we did anything rash, we told the kids, okay, we're going to sail out to this little nearby island where we'll have some privacy, and we're just going to go to shore and get grateful. And so it was a terrible sail. Everyone got seasick. We're puking over the sides. We took like 3 tries to anchor the boat, and we all just sort of collapsed and fell asleep on deck that night. And the next morning, the sun rose, and we got in the dinghy, and we rowed to shore, and we found a shady spot with a picnic table, and we said, what's awesome about right now? What is going well right now? And we went around, and everybody got a chance to say something, and it wasn't anything complicated or huge. Sometimes it was just, they were grateful for the breeze that they slept in last night, or having pancakes for breakfast, or getting to swim in the water with Dad. They were small things, but as we recentered ourselves in gratitude, and again, we all know that gratitude has that power. It just helped us remember what we were about and regain our perspective. And I think keeping in touch with gratitude and what was going right now really kept us on this trip and made it the magical adventure that it eventually became.
I love that, and I love how gratitude is what shifted it. For those who listen to the show regularly, they know this, but I'm certified in positive psychology, and I've written 2 books on gratitude. So it is that big of a game changer.
It is. Yeah, it's so powerful.
Yeah. Okay, so give us the lowdown on you went from St. John, right? St. John's?
St. Martin, but it's
St. Martin.
Close to St. Yeah, we passed through St. John's eventually.
Okay.
Yeah.
My parents used to have a place, timeshare on St. Martin's. So lovely little place to be in the world. All the way back to New York, right?
Yeah. We ended up, we sailed through the Caribbean, Virgin Islands, Bahamas to Florida, and then up the entire East Coast. And ultimately we sailed up the Hudson River, and it was kind of a beautiful moment where our last night on the boat, we're sailing up the Hudson River, and we're sailing past this marina where I had once walked into this sailing school and said, hey, I've never done this. What's involved? And literally the last night, sailing past that, I can see the office where I used to work as we sail past, Midtown and up the Hudson River to our neighborhood. We live in Upper Manhattan, and we docked the boat there and parked it at 2 a.m. and walked home to our apartment. And just, it was like we had come full circle, because we'd had this dream that, is there any way we could actually just sail up to the marina that's down the street from us and walk home? And the fact that we did was just mind-blowing.
Absolutely. Wow, what a surreal moment that must have been for all of you. I know that when you came back, you wrote a book, and I'd love for you to tell us about it in a minute. But did you chronicle this year-long family adventure? I just can't imagine doing that with 5 kids. I have 4 kids, so.
Oh yeah, no.
4 girls, as I recall. That's
right? Correct. Yeah.
We just, as Eric said, we journal, and it was part of a regular routine. I think Eric is probably more consistent than me. I think you do it almost every single day, and I kind of ebb in and out of it, but definitely multiple times a week. And the kids kept journals, and as we wrote, we referred back to our journals, and we checked in with the kids, and we checked our photos, and we also kept we were just keeping a blog for friends and family along the way. So we checked back in with some of those things as well to double check ourselves. And I like any other person who writes a memoir, we learned that memory is a funny thing. And so it was good that we had, actual records of what our experience was, so we could keep things in order in time, in reality, instead of just in how it felt looking back.
Yeah. That's such an interesting point, though, as a memoirist and as somebody who loves to read memoirs. Of course, there is that fact, if you're right, memory isn't very predictable. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of science behind that. But also, so important still is the impact of the memory, like what it's turned into for you, whether or not that's the exact replica of what happened, is just as meaningful.
100%. And I think, like Eric was saying earlier, as we actually dug back that far to like our decision to homeschool or his show closing or things, and we started to realize where these little pivot points were that at the time seemed small and then turned out to be, little hinges that big doors were swinging on.
Yeah.
We're like, wow, this happened. And also we were able to see kind of how we changed and how we had developed this pattern for approaching new and uncomfortable situations. And we actually asked our kids on the way back, like, what did you learn? And I think our second daughter I think she turned 15 on the boat, and she said, I've learned that I'm comfortable being uncomfortable, basically, is what she had learned from it. And our 17-year-old, we said, what are you taking away? She said, I don't think that I've changed in the sense that I've become a different person, but I think I've become more myself. Like that these sort of intense, for good and scary situations have really refined me. I know myself better now.
I love that. Oh, that's so magical. And y'all learned a lot. You learned enough to come back and write your book. What's the name of your book?
It's called 7 at Sea, because there are 7 of us.
7, right, of course. We will presume, provided it's available everywhere, not just on Amazon. We will put it in
lots of different bookstores.
Great. We'll put it in we have a Brave Files library, quote unquote, on bookshop.org. So we'll make sure it's there and we'll share it with folks. But you also took this knowledge, like these, you have 3 words of the 3 words you used, right? You took this and you built an entire business off of it. And I'd love to hear about that and how that transpired and what it does for folks.
Sure.
Well, when I was asking the kids that question, I said, what I think I'm taking away is 3 kinds of confidence. Competence, that's the way, you develop confidence through actually learning a new skill. credibility. When you do what you say you're going to do, it builds that confidence you have in yourself and that other people have in you as well when they see that consistency. And then for me, the most transformative one was actually calm, just trusting that I'm going to be able to figure it out, that the details will emerge as we get closer to the issue. And I don't have to know everything in advance, so I don't have to be afraid to get started. I just was really good at worrying. And so as we would move literally from island to island, like not seeing it over the horizon and then seeing it and then figuring out where the grocery stores were or where we were going to get supplies and things, and seeing it happen every time we figured it out, it helped me have that trust on a macro scale as well.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because I think what you're referring to, Heather, is what we have now come to call the navigator framework, which is what we used ourselves for years after sailing. Once we realized that, you're going to go into a new experience and you're going to be incompetent. You're going to not know what you're doing, and you're going to figure it out, and that's going to build confidence. And you're going to be on the line, and are you going to do the things you say you do? Are you going to do the things that you say you want to do? And when you do, you have credibility with yourself and others, and that builds confidence. And as you figure out more and more things, you realize, I have a long history or at least a growing history of solving problems. And you get an internal poise or calm that manifests as confidence. And then we just sort of we took those kinds of confidence into other areas of our lives where we wanted to try things, like Emily said early on, that she was afraid of deep water and snorkeling, and we're like, what are other things that we feel are beyond us, that we don't see ourselves doing those kinds of things, but they intrigue us. And as we started to tap into those ideas or opportunities, we realized, we kept pulling them off. We ended up going to house sit in Hawaii for 2 months, and then we went to New Zealand and we farm sat for 3 months and just traveled there. I'm not going to say for free, but not what most people think of as 3 months in New Zealand. And then we were, I had been a rock climber when I was a teenager and kind of gave it up and thought, like a dad with 5 kids doesn't rock climb anymore. And I was, I kind of had like my desk job body and I just thought, this is a dream that's gone. I've missed my opportunity. And yet I realized that because I took this framework and I applied it to my own life and went to work, and gradually over time, I got in shape and I re-upped my skills and I got new equipment, upgraded equipment, and
your family sat in the meadow and cheered you on.
And my family cheered me on. Yeah, I could not have done it without the support of my family. And I achieved a lifelong goal of climbing El Capitan in Yosemite, which was, something that I'd wanted to do since I was 16. And to do that in my mid-40s just felt like, what? Again, like if I can do that, then what else is possible? And as we did more and more of these things, people had more and more questions for us, and we just started to share what it was that we were doing and how we were doing it. And eventually, when our travels kind of came to an end after we'd been going around the world for 4 to 5 years, COVID brought us all home.
Yeah.
And then we said, how can we keep doing this, but from the comfort of our apartment when everyone else is in lockdown as well? And so that's when the Awesome Factory was born, and we started to more deliberately share this with others through online classes and things like that. And so it's been really fun to see the results in our own lives, and then also individuals who have tapped into what we've shared and how it's transformed their lives. And the cool thing is that this has nothing to do with wanting to live on a sailboat, because right. Most people don't want to. For most people, that's their idea of a miserable time. But they have other things that they want to do, whether it's moving back to their ancestral homeland, or starting a yoga studio, or getting into starting a design business. People have all kinds of amazing dreams that are unique to them, and we so love seeing people just step into their best selves and pushing through their fears as they tap into their own potential. It's so satisfying.
I think, our our line at the Awesome Factory that we say is that when you live a life you love, everybody wins.
Yeah. That's very in line with my message as a coach and an author and podcaster is I always say that when you choose bravely on purpose, you choose bigger, you win bigger, and it's contagious.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, for example, your daughters are seeing you do your thing.
Yeah.
And you're teaching them, and you're doing what you love, and that spills over into them. That goodness becomes part of their life as well. And as they do the things that they love, it just continues to spread and ripple out. And so we're big believers in that, and think
Absolutely.
that there's no downside to it.
None at all. It's very cool. If folks want to know more about the Awesome Factory, where can they find you?
TheAwesomeFactory.nyc. That's the website.
.nyc. See? It's why we ask, because we don't want to assume. You would not guess .nyc. I love that. Well, so speaking of having these life-changing experiences, and I really love that full circle moment of docking the boat and walking back and going past the marina where this started for you and all of that. There's so much for you to celebrate. And again, I just am in love with this idea that there's always going to be struggle, there's always going to be strife, there's always going to be difficulty, but you can focus on the things that you want, the things that bring you joy, the things that make you feel successful and grateful and all of that. So I am so curious to know how you all celebrate all of the things, those moments, what's a success, what you're grateful for, all of that. How do you like to celebrate?
Oh, well, we were not always good at celebrating, and that is actually one of the final steps in our process is like reflect and celebrate. And so one of the things we do on the daily is high fives.
Yeah.
You know, for a little thing that goes right, we now have, our motto is to celebrate small wins.
Yes.
And so I'll just say that's one way. I mean,
High five is easy.
We could throw a big party and we make big chocolate cakes and things, but throughout the day, it's like high fives and fist bumps.
I love that.
And I would say next level up is there's a lot of chocolate cakes that get baked around here. Because,
excellent. I'm a big fan.
Whenever it does not have to be a birthday.
Honestly, we make them for breakups too. We're like, it's a big moment.
Yeah,
we're gonna honor it.
Deserve chocolate cake.
Yeah.
I think that's great. High fives and chocolate cakes. I think that's why I ask this question every week is because there is something so transformative about celebrating on the spot in the moment. And you're right, that fist bump, that high five, that pause to say, this thing was good. We're going to be happy about this thing. It breeds more of it.
Mm-hmm.
The more you celebrate, the more you have to celebrate. So thank you for sharing that with us. I love it. And as we come close to the end of our time here together, will you share with us what your favorite charitable organization is to support?
Yes, I'm so excited to tell you it's called MOAS. It's Migrant Offshore Aid Station, and they started in 2013 in response to the migration of refugees across water, and they've continued to basically provide humanitarian aid to the most vulnerable people around the world. And I love them because we got on a boat to make ourselves uncomfortable, and MOAS started with people who their life was not safe, it was not livable, and they got on a boat to try to find somewhere where they could be safe. And so for whatever reason, if you're uncomfortable, you need to find a place of comfort. And if you're comfortable, it's time to get out of it. So so that's why we just have loved this organization, Migrant Offshore Aid Station.
That's awesome. Thank you. They will be our charity of the week, and we encourage all of you listeners to go out and get to know them. See what you think and help however you can, or just bring that energy into something else that you're doing. Normally at this point, I ask you to say your 3 words again. I'll have you say them, but we did talk about them. So will you share them with us one last time?
Sure. Competency, credibility, and calm. And
what do you coin those?
The 3 kinds of confidence.
The 3 kinds of confidence.
The 3 kinds of confidence. I dig it. They're 3 fantastic types of confidence. I have so loved getting to know both of you. I'm going to get my hands on a copy of your book, which is fun. This interview happened a little quicker than I could catch up with my reading, but we're going to do it. And hats off to both of you. But honestly, Emily, I mean, taking 5 kids.
She's an amazing lady, and I'm lucky to be tagging along.
Well, I don't mean to downplay Dad's role, but I just know how this stuff goes.
Yeah, no, the book definitely reveals some of my less attractive moments and how I worked through them. But yeah, it was a important and totally worth it for all of us.
It's good to know that the book reveals you as human. So often we try to pretend we're not human, and then nobody else can live up to those standards, and that's really unrealistic. So I appreciate that. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, listeners, I want to hear what you think. Share your feedback with me. Give me a call at 312-646-0205. I listen to every voicemail myself. I respond to every email myself, and I really want to connect. I want to hear how you're out choosing bravely. And if you know somebody who's a great fit for the Brave Files podcast, let's get in touch. I hope those of you that joined us for the Brave Method workshop have loved it. Share it, shout it from the rooftops. Everything you really want is just on the other side of uncomfortable, and I'm here for it, and I'm here to help you. This is Heather Vickery reminding you today and every day to go out and choose bravely. See you next week. Hey friends, I want to share something really exciting with you. We already know you enjoy listening to podcasts because you're listening to this one, but I'm also betting you enjoy audiobooks. And hey, listen, if you don't already enjoy audiobooks, then it's time to check them out. That's why I'm really excited to share Libro.fm with you. They are an incredible new platform for listening to audiobooks. And by choosing Libro.fm over other audiobook services, you are supporting a local bookstore of your choice and investing in your local community. Libro.fm offers over 150,000 audiobooks via their primary platform, which, by the way, they built with love and from scratch because they're a small business also. They even offer bookseller recommendations for great audiobook options. You can sign up right now via www.vickeryandco.com/LibroFM. That's vickeryandco.com/LIBROFM. And when you do, you'll get one free audiobook of your choice, and the proceeds will go to your favorite local bookstore. Now, check what I just said there. You're going to get a free book, and the proceeds are still going to go to your local bookstore because Libro.fm makes sure that their booksellers get paid even when they give a promo to customers. I've listened to over 20 audiobooks this year alone. I especially love listening to memoirs read by the author, and it feels great knowing that all of my purchases support my local bookstore, The Book Table, in Oak Park, Illinois. Libro.fm. The same audiobooks, the same price, but a completely different story. Check them out right now at vickeryandco.com/LibroFM. Have you ever thought about starting a podcast? Maybe you've had this thought and then quickly shut it down because who has the time? Or you don't know how, or gosh, it just all seems too hard. If you have something to share with the world, we want to encourage you to get your message out. The world needs to hear it. Did you know that 50% of all homes are podcast fans? If you've ever wondered about having your own podcast or how it can increase your business or get your message across, then please join me and the other experts from the Podcast Power Academy for our monthly free Q&A session. It's called So You Want to Start a Podcast? This casual live conversation will help you understand how podcasting can be a great decision, why now is the best time to get started, and how to get into action with it. Visit podcastpoweracademy.com to learn more. You've been listening to The Brave Files, stories of people living courageously. To learn more about the show, find our show notes and full episode transcripts, or to get some great bonus content, visit thebravefilespodcast.com. And we would love to know what you think of the show. You can give us a call at 312-646-0205. Let us know your thoughts on the episode, the show in general, or maybe share with us how you're out choosing bravely. This episode is brought to you by Vickery & Co. Success Coaching. Coaching that helps you maintain a life well lived and a business well run. Learn more at vickeryandco.com. Our music was created and produced in a custom collaboration with Matt Lewis from ML Creative Consulting, a boutique firm dedicated to helping clients identify their unique sound and amplify their brand with custom delivered soundtracks. We couldn't do any of this without our extraordinary audio engineer, Andrew Olson. Learn more about him and check out his work at findandrewolson.com. And special thanks to everyone on Team Brave, from our producers, associate producers, copy editors, writers, and support team. Special thanks to Molly, Mary, Kim, Sabra, and Sabrina. I'm your host and executive producer, Heather Vickery. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.